right, last week I started a little mini-series I'm going to do for 3 weeks on relationships and the most basic building block of all healthy relationships. This is an intensely practical, I believe life-changing series if we actually put these things into practice. And the question I want to ask today, for today's sermon, is why do some people seem warm and others seem cold? Because this is true, right? Don't look around you. All right? But some people are just, isn't that true? Some people are just warm. You want to talk to them. If you work with warm people, you want to make small talk with them from time to time. You want to tell them about your weekend. You want to ask them for advice. You want to go to them for help. But then there's people who are cold. And it's not that they've ever necessarily done anything mean to you. They've never yelled at you. They've never sworn at you. Nothing like that. But they almost make you a little nervous. You don't feel drawn in. You don't feel this desire. I want to tell you about my weekend. I want to ask you for advice on something going on at work. I want you to be part of my team. All right? So there's a difference between these different kinds of people. Now, one of the things I've discovered over the years is that a lot of the people who what might seem cold to others actually aren't cold on the inside. We just assume that if they're cold on the outside, they must be cold on the inside. But the truth of the matter is, many people who are cold or somewhere in between are actually warm on the inside, but they're missing a very basic skill. And this has everything to do with love. And so by the end of this sermon, I want to have taught you a simple skill, one simple skill. Now, I hate to oversimplify things, and always there's more to things than one of this or one of that. But in today, I want to talk about one simple skill to become more warm in your day-to-day life. And to anchor this in the Bible again, as we always want to do, we just want to remember, as we are throughout this series, that the most important commandment is to love people, right? Jesus said this, we looked at this last week, we're going to look at it at the start of every sermon to remind ourselves that the most important commandment. So pick your favorite one, pick your pet commandments, pick the ones that upset you the most when other people don't do them or that you think are wrong in our culture. And if it's not the commandment to love, that commandment is less important than this one. The most important commandment, answered Jesus, is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, to love your neighbor as yourself. And again, these are two sides of the same coin. We love God by loving people. Now, the problem is, as churches and as pastors, I'm a part of this, we usually just stop here. We just stop right here. Love, and we leave love as this kind of big, grand, vague thing. But if love truly is the most important commandment, the most important thing we can learn to do as Christians, then one of the most important things we can do is take time regularly to get down into the nitty-gritty, practical stuff and figure out, how do we get better at this? Because if we don't get down into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day practical of how we do this, we never grow in it. And then what happens is we tend to leave love on this like big picture level where we usually talk about two things. When you talk to Christians about love, we usually say one of two things. It's about sacrifice and it's about service. All right? And sacrifice and service, again, are very important. I don't want anyone to come out of this series thinking, Kris doesn't believe in sacrifice or service. All right? Like I said last week, our whole faith revolves around Jesus, who sacrificed his life and told us to serve. The problem is, if you just do those two big things, sacrifice and serve, and you don't know how to connect with people, your sacrifice and service, in many cases, actually just gets wasted. And let me prove it to you. Imagine you're driving along the road somewhere, you're on your way to some town. I don't know which one. Let's pick on a new town for once, Pansy. A lot of gravel roads in Pansy. So you're driving to Pansy, and we all know gravel roads are just terrible. Nobody should live on a gravel road. By the way, just a little note. But anyway, So you're driving down this gravel road, you're about 15 miles out of town, and suddenly you get a flat tire. All right? So what do? Let's say you call your brother, right? So you call him up on the phone and you're like, dude, I got a flat tire. I'm stuck at the side of this gravel road in the middle of nowhere. Can you help me? All right? Now, this is going to take a couple of things. This is going to take sacrifice for him, and this is going to be him doing some service if he's going to do anything for you. But now imagine that the first words out of his mouth are, you idiot. I told you. Did you get those new tires? Did I not tell you, 6 months ago, I told you to get new tires. Did you get new tires? Well, no, I haven't got around. You idiot. Slam the phone shut. I guess they don't, now with cell phones, we don't really slam them anymore. Life really has changed, eh? 15 minutes later, he comes driving up, just roaring. You can see the smoke, pulls up, kind of slides in behind you, gets out of his truck. He's all in a huff. He gets his jack. He puts it, he's grumbling. Changes your tire. Gets back in his truck. You're like, thank you. He's like, you better be, and drives off. Now, how do you feel after this wonderful interchange of sacrifice and service? I mean, has he sacrificed for you? He has. He left, he was busy at work. He left there. He drove 15 minutes one way, it took 15 minutes. This took time out of his day. He had to go. He served you. He sacrificed. And at the end of all that sacrifice and service, you feel worse. Why? Because sacrifice and service are wonderful big picture things that when you love people, you will do them. But in the absence of human connection, they fail to communicate love. And so that is throughout this whole little mini-series. I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. Sacrifice and service are important. Obviously, if you love people, you will sacrifice for them, you will serve them. But they cannot replace human connection. Contrast that with a very different story, much smaller. I want you to see how small, when it comes to love and people and human connections, small things repeated over and over again in daily interactions far outweigh big things done every once in a while with a bad attitude. Contrast that with you're driving down Main Street here in Steinbach, you see someone you know, and as you drive by, they look at you, they give you a huge grin, and they go, and they smile. That smile and that wave took maybe 2 seconds, almost no energy, and how did you feel when it was done? You feel good. It didn't totally change your life. You didn't just go and have a revelation of God and, change everything and move somewhere. It just feels good. Didn't take any sacrifice, didn't take any service. Why? Human connection. Now, you say, well, should the brother not have come out to change my tire? Absolutely. That was a wonderful, good thing to do, and he should have done it. And thank goodness we have people like that in our lives who can help us out. But imagine how much better it would be if he added in a human connection. See, human connection is the fundamental unit of how we feel loved. Imagine the first thing he says on the phone is, oh, shoot, that sucks. Where are you? Oh, man, you're in the middle of nowhere. Dang, I'll be right there. Gets there, gives you a big hug. I'm assuming you're the sister. That's why you're not changing your own tire, I guess. Oh, that was terrible. I should not have said that. I should not have said it. I am taking it back. I'm just saying, really? No, help me. Sorry. Oh, yeah, okay, that was bad. I didn't say that. The jury will strike that from the record, okay? Yeah, but the point, he gets out, he gives you a hug. You're crying at the side of the road. I won't say anything about that. And then, okay, so let's move on to 1 Corinthians 13. This is why Paul says, he talks about this at length in 1 Corinthians 13. We keep coming back to this chapter 2 in this series. If I give all I possess to the poor, that's sacrifice. Everything I have, I'm giving it to the poor. I'm helping people, right? I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship. That's servanthood. Woo! Like I am to the max giving of myself to others. I am sacrificing. I'm doing all this sort of stuff. And what good does it do me if I don't do it with love? Well, at least I can boast about it. I can feel better about myself. I can hold it over someone else in a relationship. Isn't that nice when you sacrifice for people and then you can keep reminding them of how much you've sacrificed for them? That's what you get out of it. I can give all to the poor. I can sacrifice and have hardship. Well, I can get some boasting out of it. I can get some control. But if I don't have love, I gain how much? Nothing. I gain nothing. I want my kids to feel loved. I want my coworkers to feel loved. I want my siblings to feel loved. And I do all this stuff. And in the end, if I don't do this within the context of connection, emotionally connecting with them and showing them that I love them with those little acts of connection, I gain nothing. How many children have grown up in homes where their parents worked really hard and fed them and sheltered and clothed them, and they have almost no relationship with their parents as adults? Their parents sacrificed for them, but there's no relationship. Because it's love, it's connection we need, not sacrifice and service. So that brings us up to what we talked about last week, which we will continue to repeat throughout these 3 weeks. The most basic building block of human connection are what we call emotional bids. And I did not come up with this. I can give you books and stuff. I've been reading about this for a year or two. There's lots of research into this. But emotional bids, any question, these are the things that are going on as we interact with human beings throughout the day, every day. And these are the things that day in and day out add up to this thing that we call love. And an emotional bid is any question, gesture, look, sound, or touch that invites connection or response. All right? Now, I'm going to put up a list of just some potential ones that people use, and then I want to show you 3 signs that you might. I don't want anyone to feel guilty like I'm hitting them over the head. I want no wives here to look at their husbands during this sermon. No knowing looks or elbows. Let the Holy Spirit do the work. I saw that. So examples of emotional bids could be a smile or a wave, right? You're passing a car, asking for help or advice. Someone comes up to you at work and asks you for help on something. That is ultimately about a lot more than help or advice. It is a bid for connection. Someone comes up to you, you come home, your roommate or your child or your spouse or whatever starts telling you about their day or about the weekend. That's a bid for connection. Sharing something personal. Let me tell you something I like. Asking you a personal question. Who's that in the picture? Someone comes to your cubicle. You just think, get away from me. You're annoying me. That's a bid for connection. Asking where you're sitting. You see someone at church. You don't normally see them there. And they say to you, where are you sitting? That's not a factual question so that they can go home and go, they always sit in the 3rd row on the left side. They don't care about the facts. They're looking for a connection. The implied question is, can I sit with you? Nobody wants to be alone. We're all desperate for human connection. We're thirsty for connection. And if we can get better at this thing of giving and responding to people's emotional bids, we will grow in this big picture thing that the Bible says is the most important thing, which is to love. So, 3 signs that you might. Now, you might have these signs in your life, and you're amazing at connection. I don't know. But you might need help on your connection skills if you regularly feel left out or forgotten by the people around you. Now notice this is not just something that happens once or twice, but if you regularly feel left out or forgotten by the people around you, it just feels like the people you think of as your friends, they just regularly do stuff with other people in that group and they don't include you. You just regularly get left out of stuff at work. Nobody asks you to join the team. It's just regular. You just feel left out. It might be something with your connection skills. Now, when this happens, we tend to what? Blame. Our first thought is, my friends stink. They always forget me, but they don't forget each other. Weird. And at work, they never think about me. When there's a promotion, when they are putting together a team, when they need new ideas for some new project, they never think about me. It's because of them. They're not good people. They don't like me, all this sort of stuff. If you regularly feel left out or forgotten by the people around you, it might be your connection skills. It might be that you give off a vibe And it's not magic. It's a combination of body language and tone and attitude. When you walk down the hallway at work, you just look down and you're just in a rush. You're just... And you might think, yeah, but I've never told anyone off. I never said anything. I never, told anyone their idea was bad. Yeah, but you give off a vibe. You don't look at people and smile. You never stop for small chat. You're too busy for all that sort of stuff. And so when it comes to thinking about who am I going to bring into this or who am I going to invite to this, people don't even think about you because you haven't connected with them enough to put yourself on their radar. Might be your connection skills. Here's the second thing. You often feel lonely and or unliked by the people around you. Now, there are people in our society who are genuinely lonely. I think of, we have this problem in our society, growing problem, elderly people who are alone. They're shut-ins, they live in an apartment or a condo somewhere by themselves. Maybe their spouse has passed away or they were always single. Their family doesn't live anywhere close, and they're literally physically alone. Okay, that's a problem. That has nothing to do with this. There are people who are just physically alone. But then there are people who have people all around them. They live at home with some roommates, or they live at home with their family, or they work in a workplace where, some days now people just always work from home. So again, I can see people who are physically alone. But then there are people, you show up at work every day, there's people all around you. But you feel alone. You feel like people don't notice you. They don't think about you. And again, we tend to blame people. But again, we don't see how some of the little things we do repeated over and over and over again make people think we don't want them to be around. And we end up alone. Here's a third one. You have very little influence at work or home. So again, these three all kind of work together. And you think, why didn't everybody at work goes to this one colleague, and they're not nearly as smart as me. They're borderline dumb. Borderline. I have the training. I have the extra degrees. I have the skills. I've been here longer. But they all go to them. Or there's a parent, right? And you're like, I would love for my kids to come to me. But they all go to your spouse. And he has no wisdom. He's just fun. That's it. He should not be giving them advice. In fact, it's just me telling him what to say to them when they come to him. Why do I not have influence? Again, this is often a connection problem, not an expertise problem. So let's think about two people, and let's put it in a workplace. So imagine two different people at work and feel how different these people feel. So one person, whenever, again, you pass by their cubicle, they look up, they smile. If it's a Monday morning, it's like, hey, how was your weekend? And you stop and you talk to them for a couple of minutes. Oh, that's so good. They're the kind of people where, if the office has to go to a conference or a couple people have to go to a conference and they see you, by yourself somewhere, they're like, hey, come over, sit by me. Isn't it amazing, by the way, how that one little thing, if you're in a big group of people and someone says, hey, come sit at my table, or hey, have lunch, come sit with me in a lunchroom. Isn't it amazing how that one little thing feels massive? But again, as Christians, we've been trained to think of the little things as little and the massive things as massive. You want to love someone, give your life for them. And as I said last week, you can only do that once. But you can invite someone to sit with you or smile at them thousands of times over and over again in your life. So you have that person. Now, what does that person feel? They smile at you, they make a little bit of small talk. You might not hang out after work ever, but you feel comfortable with them. Now, when you have a question or a concern or something you want to talk about work, it just feels natural. You don't think to yourself, who is the smartest IQ person at work? That's not what you think. Who got the best grades at university? I want to see all my managers who had the best grades. That's who I'm going to go talk to. That is not how you think. You go to the person you just naturally follow, smiley, nice person. Now there's a second person, and I kind of alluded to this person before, and they're always in their own little world. It's not that they're bad. If you actually get them to stop, they can be very nice if you meet them outside of work. But if you ask them, hey, what are you doing tomorrow for at coffee break or whatever, it's like, oh, coffee break. That's for the lazy ones. I don't have time for coffee break. I don't have time for people. Like, they just give off this vibe. So who are you going to go to? Who are you going to talk about work to? And in the end, who is going to have more influence on other people? It's the one with the connections who's going to have the influence. Now, I want to briefly just talk about personality for just a second, because I feel like a lot of us chalk this up essentially to magic. Personality is what we use this word. It's like a black box of magic. I just wasn't wired right. It's just my personality. It's just the way God made me. Kind of sucks, but people just don't like me and I don't like them. Now, personality is a real thing, all right? There is such a thing as extroverts and introverts, and people see the world differently, and there are people who tend to focus more on tasks and people who tend to focus more on people, all that sort of stuff. That is all very true, but let me tell you something right now. You can be an introvert. There are lots of introverts in the world who are warm, wonderful people, welcoming people. That's not an extrovert-introvert thing. That is a people thing, and it's our behavior. It's our choices in the daily little things that add up to make us either approachable or not approachable. Reminds me, the book of Proverbs has so much to say about sowing and reaping. It says this in Proverbs 11, a generous person will prosper. Now, whenever we read the word generosity as Christians in the Bible, we immediately usually go to finances. We just think about finances. Finances is an important piece of your life. It is just one piece of your life. It's important, no doubt. But when it says a generous person will prosper, this applies to so much more than just your money. This applies to how you treat people. Generous with time, generous with attitude, generous with affection, generous with connection. A generous person will prosper. This is what I've been talking about. The person at work who smile and say hi and it's easy to talk to, guess what? People and influence flow to that person. You want to talk to them. Cold people push people away. A generous person will prosper, but it's not magic. It's not just something you were born with. It's something you do, repeated over and over and over again, that makes a difference. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. When you just do those little things and you connect with people, you feel better, they feel better. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. I was thinking this week of, there were just so many stories in my head, but I was remembering this true story. A few years ago, I was at an event. Lots of people. It's noisy. Dad and his son come in, right? It's noisy, it's busy, all this sort of stuff, right? Kids probably early middle school, just my guess. Kids droning on. Now, I look over, I kind of just tune into them for a second, right? Like, I'm a people watcher, most of us are as human beings. And they're coming in right beside me, and the son is droning on and on. I think it was about video games, something about video games. And the dad, you can see, is distracted. I mean, it isn't a good time. Like it just isn't. Middle school kids, well, a lot of people just don't actually know when a good time is. But he's on and on to his dad about this. And finally, dad's distracted, it's noisy, and he's trying to get settled. And finally, Dad, it takes just a few seconds, at least from what I could see. I mean, it probably had been going on for half an hour already or something, who knows. But all of a sudden, Dad just snaps and he just turns around and says, I don't understand a word you're saying. I don't care about those video games. Now, if you're a parent here, you have done this. So again, this person isn't wicked. We don't need to, burn them at the stake or nothing like that. You have done this. If your kid is more than a year old, you have done this. Okay? In fact, step outside for just 1 second. You want to hear a very encouraging stat? Someone told me this once, and I'm not even looking it up because I want it to be true, so I don't care if it actually is true. But when it comes to parenting, you only have to get it right like a third of the time. Shoot higher, please. But it feels good that we don't have to be perfect. I don't know if that's true. Don't look it up. I won't either. Anyway, I don't care about your video games. Kid, you can just see the kid deflate. head falls forward, shoulders forward. It's like a gut punch. Like you can just watch this happening. All right? Now again, was this a good time for the kid to be? No, absolutely not. Are there ways, however, to say no to a kid's request and still say yes to their bid for connection? Yes, because here's the thing we have to remember. We have to train ourselves to see something. And that is this. When that kid is talking to his dad about those games, that it is not about the games. It is about connection. He doesn't know he's doing it. The dad doesn't know he's doing it. We have to train ourselves to see it. We share these things with people because we want connection. That's why we feel compelled to talk about ourselves, to talk about things we like. Now again, maybe in that moment, it wasn't a good moment. But there are ways to say no, and I think I have that on a PowerPoint slide so we can all remember it. We can say no to people's requests while still saying yes to their bids for connection. Now, in his better moments, no doubt this dad would have done much better. This is just one of those moments, and we all have them. But in a better moment, the dad would realize this isn't about the games, this is about the connection, and he would look to his kid and he would say, those games sound amazing. Like, actually, they sound amazing. He might be lying at this point, but it's okay. Lies like this are fine. Those games sound amazing to me, young man. And I would love to hear about them later on the drive home. Do you see what you've done there? You've said no. Like, it's not like every time someone stops you at work or anytime someone has a bid for connection, you have to say yes and stop what you're doing and have an hour-long conversation where you share the deepest parts of your heart. No. But what it means is that even when you say no to the request or you have to have a boundary, you say it in a way that invites further connection in the future. There's a way that we say no that deflates people and says, you don't matter. And there's a way that says no to people that says, I care about what you care. That's the most loving thing we can do to the human beings around us. Now, as I said, this is going on in the adult world all the time. At work, subconsciously, we just don't consciously stop to think about it. But at work, we're constantly asking. Every day, our interactions with the people around us are asking, do I matter to my coworkers? Do I matter to my boss? Do I matter to my suppliers or contractors or the people around me? Do I matter? And the way we figure that out, and this is all going on behind the scenes. We don't think it's going on, but it's always going on. And the answer to that question is being answered over and over and over again in the little interactions we have with the people around us. And that's why you can have two jobs that are identical at two different places. Same job description. One job, you go there, you do this exact same job description, and you love it. You come home every day energized. Oh, I love the people I work with. It's so fun. We get along. We're like friends. We're working towards a common goal. Other place of business, exact same job description, cold. It's just a job. Even if they're not mean to you. I mean, if they're mean, then that's a whole nother level. But even if they're not mean, it's just cold. Nobody really cares about me. It's just about getting the job done. Those are two completely different places to work, and it makes a huge difference in your life if you're in one or if you're in the other. Everything is better. Everything feels better in life when the people around us regularly say yes to connection. It just feels better. Family, school, work, neighborhood. I love this verse from Proverbs. From the fruit of their lips, people are filled with good things. Everything feels better when the people around you use their words, use their interactions with you to build connection. It's just good. It's better. So, I want to leave you with one skill, right? One skill to make you better at these daily interactions that add up to make you a more loving and ultimately successful in the things that matter person. I'm going to call this connection ping pong. Hopefully you won't forget that. Connection ping pong. What on the earth is connection ping pong? Well, let me show you from an everyday example, all right? So let's imagine you're at work and a coworker comes by. So I'm using work, but this kind of thing happens in family everywhere, right? So you're at work, and a coworker, it's 11 a.m., they walk by your desk and they say, what are you doing for lunch today? What are you doing for lunch today? Now, maybe you're a more task-oriented person naturally, and you're not recognizing that this is actually a bid for connection, because that's what this is. This is a bid for connection. This is not a fact. This person is not writing a test later, and it's like, what did everybody at your workplace eat, and what did they do? And they filled it out. This is not a fact for you to just spit something out of like, oh, I'm blah, blah, blah. This is, they're looking for connection. What are you doing for lunch today? There's an implied question, but without having to risk too much, because we're scared sometimes. We don't want to just say, hey, come have lunch with me. I don't know you that well. Or I don't want to eat lunch by myself. So we just put out this, oh, what are you doing for lunch today? That is a bid for connection. Right? It's not just about lunch. All right? It's not just about video games. It's not just about lunch. This is a bid. Now, we have to train ourselves to recognize these. Now, there's 3 ways we can respond to a bid. We can turn towards the bid. Turn towards the person. This is a bid for connection, and I'm turning towards you for more connection. We can ignore the bid. This happens a lot in families, right? When we're busy, just if I don't say anything, they'll just go away. We can turn down the bid. We can just reject it. Ignore feels cold, reject feels really bad. Turn toward feels unimaginably good and is life-changing for us physically, mentally, and emotionally when we have lots of turning towards in the people around us. So now, a couple of different ways this conversation can go. Imagine that your response is, because you're a busy person. You're a very busy person. You have important tasks. And I'm not being sarcastic. We're busy people, and people at work have important tasks. So let's imagine that you're very busy and you have important tasks. And so you say, I alluded to this kind of a response before, lunch, who has time for lunch? Because you are important and busy. That's what this phrase says. I am important and busy. Who has time for lunch? Pfft, lazy. You're not earning your wage. And then person 1 is like, awkward. Now, the ping pong is over, by the way. They served you a soft serve, and you took that thing and smashed it way off the table. Game over. And they're like, oh, awkward. Sorry, never mind. Now, let me ask you something. Again, these are small things. When we talk about Jesus' love for us, let's talk about dying. Let's talk about serving. Things you rarely actually get to do. How does this make this person feel? When do you think is the next time they're going to ask you what you're doing for lunch? Never. Because you might think, in the back of your head, you might be thinking, I hope they ask me next week. You're not getting any ask. And you might wonder, now, if you give these kinds of responses, now it might not even be quite this abrupt, but if you give these kinds of responses regularly, I have now just explained to you why you regularly get forgotten for promotions and parties. Because you don't build connection. All right? Now, let's imagine a different way that this could go. Now, of course, you might actually not have time for lunch. Let's imagine that you do, but there's ways to say no to lunch that say yes to connection and more bids in the future. But there's a different way this conversation could go. So let's imagine that you have a plan, because you're a planned person. You're one of those people at the beginning of the week, you plan out what you're going to wear the rest of the week. You plan out your lunches, you plan out your suppers. In your plan was not so-and-so and me having lunch together. You have a perfectly good, ham and bologna sandwich on white Wonder Bread, loaded with mayo. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, so you didn't have a plan, but now you're going to roll with this because you've trained yourself that you're not just saying this is an ask about my lunch, this is a bid for connection. So let's say that you answer with this. I brought a sandwich because you already have a plan and you wanted to eat outside because it's summer and it's nice. I brought a sandwich. Now, ping pong. They sent you an easy serve. You send them a serve, you send them a return, a little softy. I brought a sandwich. Want to join me outside? Because you don't want to go anywhere else. You want to be outside. But they could join you. Why are we talking about something so small at church? These are the interactions that make up a human life. And these are the interactions that are going to determine at the end of your life if people think of you as loving or if they think of you as cold. Someone who they were scared to talk to in the lobby, at work, at church, or wherever. I brought a sandwich. You want to join me outside? Now, let's say person one, they were more thinking like they're the person who doesn't plan anything. They show up at work, and then an hour later, they think, I'm hungry. Oh, shoot, I didn't bring anything. So now they got to do, but what are they going to do? So ping pong, the serve came over. You want to join me outside? That's another bid for connection. You hit it back. Now, do they want to keep the connection going, or do they want to say, eat outside? It's far too smoky. Goodness, what are you thinking? You have a mask? Put a blanket over my face? No. They can hit it back. Maybe they say something like this. I'd love to, but I need to pick up something from 7-Eleven first. Now, that's not going to help you have a long life, but you're improvising. You're trying to keep the connection going. And then they make another bid for you. You want something? Sure, I'll have a Diet Mountain Dew. Please, that is not what I like. I'm just using an illustration. Never get me a Diet Mountain Dew. Never get me a Mountain Dew, okay? That was for my middle school son. He loves Mountain Dew. Anyway, as do all middle school boys. But I'd love to. But I need to pick up something from 7-Eleven first. You want something? See, and do you see how the conversation, it's just bids for connect. You want something? Oh, no, I'm okay. Actually, I could use a 3 days old donut. Wrapped in cellophane. That sounds amazing. Sure. It's such a little thing. Relational ping pong. What are you doing for lunch? Brought a sandwich. You want to join me? Well, I got to pick up something from Seva, but hey, you want something? Relational ping pong. What you're doing is you're not getting focused on all the other stuff you have to do. You're recognizing that this is a human being, and going to work and all the things of life are actually just an excuse for God, that God has put us here on earth to do, to mix with other people and love Him and them. That's all this is. At the end of your life, you're not going to remember every day you spent at work. You're going to remember the people you connected with. Work, yes, is going to provide for you and do all kinds of amazing stuff, but in the end, it's going to be about the people. So can we train ourselves to learn to see people? Now notice how this conversation feels as opposed to lunch. Who has time for lunch? You leave lunch, who has time for lunch? You leave that conversation feeling like, deflated. This little conversation, and you feel good. Hey, I like the people I work with. They like me. I feel valued. And you become that cup of cold water. Remember what Jesus said? Matthew 10:42, we looked at it last week. Any of you who gives even a cup of cold water to one of the least of these will surely not lose their reward. It's the little things that add up in the kingdom of God. So here's our reflection time. Think about this for about a minute. Think on yourself. Are you good at seeing and responding to bids? Some people are they're just naturally good at it, but this is something we can all do. Or is this something you need to work on? Now, one of the things here at Crossview, I could have put, this is what I would have done in the past. Think of a time this past week where you screwed up. It's time for you to feel bad. It's Sunday morning. But you know what's actually one of the best ways to learn? Is to remember the times we did it right. Can you think of a time this past week where you noticed someone making a bid for connection and you turned towards? You didn't ignore, you didn't reject, you turned towards. If you can remember some of those prayerfully throughout this week, you are going to get better at this. So those of you who want, why don't you bow your heads with me and close your eyes? I'm going to give you a moment, just take a deep breath. And think about the most important thing you can think of. how to become more loving. If you're a parent, you might want to think about a time this week. Try and think of a time when one of your kids, now you can see it, in retrospect you can see it, they were making a bid for connection. And you turned toward it. Or maybe you want to think of at work. There's a time this week a coworker or your boss or someone who works for you or a customer made a bid for connection and you turned towards it. How did that feel? It's energizing. It feels amazing. Or maybe it was your spouse, or maybe it's a friend or a roommate made a bid for connection and you turned towards. You said yes. You played a little bit of connection ping pong. You kept the ball going. You started to build a relationship. Father, remind us of some of those times. Every day we have dozens of interactions with people. Help us to become more aware of the human beings around us. Each one thirsty for connection. That's what you made us for. And Lord, may we be a group of Christians. Discipleship means growing in actually becoming more loving. May this be something we're growing in these next couple of weeks. Being more aware of others' bids for connection around us, getting better at turning towards. In Jesus' name we pray. And all God's people said, Amen.